Hello and welcome to Creative Freedom Podcast until it gets a better name. But for now, it's to the point. So thank you so much. Today we have a very, very special guest, Hierophunk, DJ Hierophunk. And I'm so excited. I'm actually so excited to have you on here today. I wanted to do a couple podcasts on my own before I had you on because I know that this is a big one and I wanted to make sure I was organized because I have such a wide mind. So I was like, okay, I really want to call in Diamond Light here and really, embrace the precision. So I'm so excited to have you here. And so today we're going to focus on creative freedom and some of the pillars within your life.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that I want to talk about include, rest, the importance of rest in creative freedom, and ceremony.
Okay.
But a big reason why I wanted to do the podcast at this stage right now is you have recently had a big transformation, a big sort of peak experience in your creative expression and in your success. I mean, it's one of many peaks that you're going to experience in your life, but I thought it would be a really great time to have you on the podcast because I feel like that energy is so fresh right now. I would love for you to share with us some of the really exciting things that you've been doing.
The most exciting thing that I've been working on right now is working on music products as a producer and working and collaborating with other artists to create like an enmeshed kind of genre of using ancient mysticism and blending it with bass music. So that's really the most exciting thing that I've been working on right now.
Yeah, and I think it's great too. And I didn't even think we were going to delve into this, but especially in the age of AI, where there's a lot of imitation, the fact that you're working with mystics and people who are channeling, there's very little room for imitation
Yeah.
because you're working with people in so much honesty. So I think that's one of the many things that I really like about your work.
But yeah, basically the codes that I'm kind of capturing from people are when they're in like a deep state of flow, when they're really, really in their kind of like when they're really in their temple, they're really in an honest present moment, channeling from their pure essence, and to capture those moments and elevate it with music and then allow people to move with that intelligence, I think is a really beautiful way to paint the picture of the wisdom keepers that are trying to share their voices right now to help elevate the spirits of people on earth, right? And there's no better way to do that than music because we are made of frequency. Like we are made of the magnetic order of magnetism, electricity, and dielectricity. So that holy trinity of, body, mind, and spirit, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, that every single holy trinity there is, feminine, masculine, and androgynous. Well, music is it's a completion of all three. And music is the makeup of the universe. So music has the highest potential to, harmonize chaos.
And it's so interesting when we talk about harmonizing chaos because grace is the precision of a prayer. And I do feel like a lot of the people that you work with, the muses that you work with, are in prayer. They're in a deep prayerful state.
Yeah.
And the music that you kind of surround and uplift their voices with is also so precise. And so humorous as well at the same time. It's very precise and humorous and bassy, and it's so much fun. And you recently just performed some of your music for 4,000 people. So that's super wild. And the fascinating thing about it is like you're a lot, like we have discussed this, where you're like, a lot of people are going to look at me and say, oh, overnight success kind of situation. And that's not the case at all. But a lot of people are going to, maybe feel that because you often have a way of, you take a lot of rest in your practice, and it's very important. And the first thing I really want to delve into is the importance of rest in our practice. And I think you're a perfect person to talk to it about because you are a projector. So yes, I really want your perspective on how you're able to manifest such big things and accomplish such amazing things while still weaving in rest, because I think that's such an important part for creatives that many creatives forget or feel shame around. So I would love to hear.
Yeah. I think, first of all, guilt and shame are two of the primary kind of like blockages of the creative process to begin with. And artists in general typically have a very kind of like uphill slope to get to just become worthy of being an artist sometimes, to not actually have guilt and shame around, you know expressing in general, like expressing your
Mm-hmm.
voice, expressing your truth, because the world right now is rewarding synthetic behavior. So there are rewards set in place by certain systems to literally reward behavior that promotes inauthenticity and conformity, and you know it's kind of called the singularity, right? The singularity when, we can see the singularity happening right now. Okay. The singularity is everybody's afraid to use their own voice. So everything from a text message to a DM to an email is being written by AI,
Mm-hmm.
right? So every single person on the human planet who does that, who is a lot of people now, especially in the corporate world, use that and they all become the same thing. They don't realize that by doing these actions, you're actually entraining your reality too, that you're not capable of thinking and you have to get thought outside of yourself. So this is what's formulating the singularity. So artists actually have a huge, huge role in maintaining balance on this earth, to actually maintain beauty and authenticity, because beauty and authenticity are what promote the human organic experience. When I mean organic, I just mean those of us who are like calling in consciousness from the cosmos and, you know, bringing in that kind of like divine connection from the stars. We have a soul. We have, connection to whatever form of God or spirit you might believe in, or, and hopefully you feel some connection to the divine, because without that, it kind of promotes that feeling and that sensation of almost feeling empty. And I think that's what promotes the feelings of addiction. So creatives play a huge role in just the maintenance of divinity and beauty in this world, which opens hearts, which opens minds, which allows people permission to embody themselves, their truths, so that they don't wrap it up in some blanket of otherness to try and satisfy a system that's built to support their inauthenticity. I think inauthenticity is what's, creating this loneliness epidemic too that we have in the world. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if people can't even connect deeply, in a real life way with their
Mm-hmm.
own thoughts, their own communications, and have their hearts open, then, as a species, we're actively dying. And I think that's why I can see how humanity potentially is consenting to its own demise, because people don't believe in their own sovereignty and their own ability to be creators.
A question that I have for you. So, like you just expressed, so people are feeling the need to imitate because they don't feel like they belong, and people are also feeling like they're not connecting to each other because they're hiding parts of themselves because of shame, or because of um, shame, or these kind of things that are blocking that. How is it that you, as a creative person, have overcome that kind of need to homogenize in order to fit in, or is it something you had to overcome?
I would say that I homogenized for more of my life than I was authentic. And that wasn't even coming from a place of knowing that I was there. I really had to learn that I was even in imitation, right? And the reason I actually knew that I was in imitation is because I was experiencing frequent depression, because I was experiencing, you know, frequent anxiety, frequent like, feelings of suppression of my own emotions, and a lot of guilt and shame and fear. And then when I realized, and when I came to the teaching that the opposite of depression was creativity, then I realized that, okay, then there's probably a creative part of me that isn't being satisfied, even though I would still say that I lived a very creative life my whole life and expressed myself in a lot of different ways. But, some of my expressions were very corporate, and they actually weren't super in alignment with what my heart really wanted. It was still a way to impress others or drive in external validation in some way. But
Hmm.
a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is primarily for myself first. Like, I'm actually just working on a lot of tracks that make me laugh or make me smile or make me open my heart, or they help me integrate a wisdom. Like, I made a song called Divine Chaos with a transmission from a wisdom keeper in Hawaii named, who we both know, named Keone Hanale. And that helps me process like external and internal chaos that I've been going through. Like, but there's a lot of external chaos in the world, and so therefore, as a reflection of our inner worlds, it's probably there too. And I did notice that in myself, and I noticed honestly that I have, after having listened to the song over and over and over, and that's what I do with my own music, right? That's how I know I like it. That's how I even know if I want to release it or share it. Is like I really vibe with it, and I've been listening to it a lot. I love it, and I've been feeling more and more peaceful. Like, I've genuinely have started to really, really feel the effects of completing the circuit of understanding chaos. And
Hmm.
it's helping me to have less guilt and shame around, experiencing inner chaos. It's really interesting. So yeah, the art in itself is the medicine for the thing that I'm processing. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I'm sure you understand
Yeah.
that too, even with your paintings and like,
Yeah, well, I mean, you speak about this a lot, bathing yourself in your own frequency. And, it is really powerful. I remember when I was experiencing a lot of isolation in 2020, 2020, 2019, 2020. I remember thinking to myself, the way to create community within myself is through living creatively. It helped me create a sense of belonging within myself.
mhm.
So I totally understand, because when you hear kind of yourself talking back to yourself, it's like an affirmation of sorts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was teaching a class yesterday and one of my students asked me, like, you know, like, I'm starting to awaken all these parts of myself. And it's also very scary because there's times when, you've learned something, but you haven't integrated it yet. And that can be really bumpy because it's almost like, oh, now I know I'm causing harm, but I haven't quite learned how to reprogram it yet. I would say the
Yeah.
most powerful way that you can reprogram a thought pattern or like, which is just an electrical loop inside of your brain that needs to complete itself, is music, because music is that completion of harmonies, of rhythm, of movement, of energy, and it supports that. And especially if the messaging behind that is actually coming from you. So one of the most powerful things you can do is actually record your own voice
Mm-hmm.
doing affirmations or saying your poetry. And your poetry can just be your interpretation of what it is that you're feeling, right? What it is that's coming from you. And you play that back for yourself, or you can write a piece, you can make a piano piece, or whatever, paint or throw a party, whatever your art is, put it on a wall, whatever it is. But you bathe yourself in the frequency of going into the art with that question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And coming out with anything, and knowing that it's your resolution probably did come from within, right? And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
find with music. It's very deliberate. Like, I'll put something I don't understand from a wisdom keeper, a teacher, something, and because it's like bass music, I get to play with repetition. I get to play with trance. I get to play with, like, all the things that you would want to use to shift a thought.
Yeah, any form of art, or I feel creative expression, is a great way to reprogram the subconscious. It's a great way to both observe the subconscious and see whatever's going on, but also to say, okay, this is the new thought pattern that I want. So that is something I really love about your music, that I trust the thought patterns that you're exploring, because we have the conversations and you talk about it, and you are often working with either like ancient wisdom and things like that. So it's often like, okay, cool, or even just like nature sounds or samples from very organic life as well.
Yeah.
So having that at the core of the charge of it, I feel very open and down to consent to the information of your music and the medicine of your music. So
Thank
it's
you.
it's yeah, yeah, it's really great. So
Yeah,
I
I
love,
mean, the
yeah, that's
messaging
why
is
you're my
always going
favorite
to be
DJ.
like self-reflective love at the end of the day, which
Mm-hmm.
is which is like just being in tune with how to move energy through your body in a positive way. Like if you want to choose to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think if you use music,
Mm-hmm.
it can lift you almost immediately,
Mm-hmm.
It can shift you just about anywhere
Mm-hmm.
instantaneously, vibrationally.
Or even just like, I find with music, even if it's music that is like chaos or rage or feelings that are intense, it's like there's a catharticness to it and saying, oh, it's okay that you feel this feeling. There's nothing wrong with
Exactly.
you. And so
Exactly.
even just the allowance itself is healing.
Exactly. And I think that's what was behind my choice to even make like really kind of like, in the spiritual world, everybody takes everything so seriously. So it's
Mm.
really good medicine for me to make booty music with wisdom keepers. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it should be a silly goose time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be, a ladybug parade. I really do think that like gnomes are real, and I really think that anything that puts us into the present moment and allows us to take in as much beauty as possible is a good thing, right? I think
Mm.
we spend too much time judging each other for what's right and what's wrong, when in reality, we should all be dancing around the fire together and telling our
Mm-hmm.
stories, because my story, even though I might seem crazy to you, or somebody else, could you imagine hearing my stories? And if I get to hear, your stories, and whether or not and even better, actually, if I don't subscribe to the way that you live, because your stories are going to be even more interesting to me. We could actually approach each other like that. And I think that's what dance culture does.
Mm.
Dancing around a set of, subwoofers is almost the same as dancing around a fire, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm all for more fire at dance events too.
Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah, no, any sort of kind of thing that allows us to look at each other with unconditional love, being loving who we are without trying to change the
Yeah.
other person. Whether that's the dance floor, whether that's puppets, whether that's, just any sort of expression of self where we get to look at the person and say, well, we see that's who you are and we love you for who you are where you're at.
Yeah.
It's very healing.
Yeah. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the best medicine. And we can only
Mm-hmm.
do that for other people if we're doing it for ourselves primarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the best way, like if you're able to just get into your body, I notice like we'll throw like a lot of sober events, like sober
Mm-hmm.
raves and stuff like that. And there's always going to be a group of people that are going to come on substances, right? And they don't usually cause any problems. It's nothing too bad, but like, you know, I would encourage anybody who's at that stage to just try it. Try
Mm-hmm.
to see what the feeling of going to one of these spaces is like, where you can actually let your guard down fully.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much healing, there's so much magic that can be had
Well,
in a space like that.
Well, yeah, because if you think about it, like there's something really powerful about, say, there's emotions that we have, for instance, like that we might judge, like anger and sadness. And when we go to the dance floor, we can actually express them because the music is so booty shaken. And so we're on the dance floor, we're like, ah! We're having a great time. We're expressing our sacred rage, our sacred grief. We're expressing those feelings. And it's okay if we need some support to do that. And if the
Um,
support is a substance, that's fine. But often what happens when we have the support of a substance is we often negate the experience and say, oh, I let myself feel that because I was XYZ, rather
exactly.
than actually being witnessed by community, completely sober, crying and realizing no one is rejecting you, screaming, no one is rejecting you, throwing a tantrum on the dance floor, no one is rejecting you.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point too about not judging. Like, if where you're at right now is you have to take substances
Mm-hmm.
to get through. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of people, and I know this is controversial, but there's a lot of people whose lives can be saved, right? Who
Mm-hmm.
go through that phase, but it's really important that when the hands are there to help you out of that,
Mm-hmm.
if it's become habitual where you can't function without it, then then we have to really, really negotiate with our bodies more and say, okay, if I'm on these substances, that means I'm likely numbing my body more. And that means that I'm restricting the emotions that I'm enabling myself to feel, and therefore not allowing myself to complete that circuitry, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I have maybe built up a little bit of electromagnetic resistance in my body, which might lead to things like depression, shutting down, and feeling closed, right?
And
Feeling closed,
illness.
and illness, like actual physical disease, because all of that is electromagnetic as well. And if you try to do it substance free, you're going to feel the things you need to feel. And it might be big, but you're going to be surrounded by people that are there to support you. And that's the most
Mm-hmm.
important thing, is the
Mm-hmm.
shift that can happen when there is community that's there to catch you when you land. It
Mm-hmm.
starts to build up that sense of safety and belonging. And that's where people start getting the confidence to start making art again. That's where people start building the confidence to start being themselves again. When they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to mask, when they don't, when you can cry in front of people and it's okay, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a sober dance floor does. It actually is like, it's like opens the gate for the emotional experience, which is the human experience.
Mm-hmm. And the imperfection, you know, the play, like rather than having a perfectly choreographed dance, just shaking and moving the body the way that it needs to in dance, which is an art form, can transfer into being like, maybe I just need to make art in a way that isn't necessarily beautiful, but that just feels the way it needs to feel.
Exactly, just moves the energy. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something you and I have probably learned over the past few years is like, above anything, just make ugly art. As long as you're making the art, but just make it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's totally fine to just let it be a mess. Let it be a mess sometimes.
Sometimes that's a medicine is the mess.
Medicine in the mess.
Yeah, because you're taking the mess from the inside and you're putting it outside. So,
Mm-hmm.
you've still done something beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would love to take this moment as like since we've been talking about community witnessing and community holding us throughout our evolution, because one of the biggest things that I find challenging is like, oh, if I let myself evolve, will I be alone? If I let myself evolve, will I lose the community that I already have?
Yeah.
And sometimes that does happen. But there is something beautiful about having kind of a wide net, whether it be in the sober dance space or certain community things that we try to curate, whether it's through whatever things we want to create. But it allows us a little bit more to take these leaps because we're like, well, look, like there's people following their dreams. There's if I take a leap and follow my dreams, it's not like, oh, if I follow my dreams, the people in my community are going to hate me because they're not following their dreams and they're going to be jealous. It's like, well, no, if I take a leap, I see like 7 to 10 people following their dreams, so I could probably leap and there's people on the other side. It's not like there's no one there, right?
Yeah.
So having community makes that leap a little bit easier for sure.
Yeah, it really, really does. And
Mm-hmm.
it only takes one person to jump first to actually, open up permission for a whole community to do something, right? That's why I find
Mm-hmm.
like a dance floor is a really beautiful place to see that too. Like, we'll have really special people that can just light up a room and
Mm-hmm.
they know how to express their belonging in such a beautiful way on the dance floor that it
Mm-hmm.
just inspires other people to open up too.
Mm-hmm.
That first person on the dance floor, like Roberto, like the actually even people like you, when you get on a dance floor, it just, yeah, it has the voltage to just inspire other people to open because they feel
Mm-hmm.
safe to do so, because you
Yeah.
can tell those people are really fully being themselves, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. When I was younger, I did a lot of like acting and auditions and stuff like that. And I was so friendly during the auditions. I loved meeting people, highly social, highly motivated by people.
Yeah.
And so I'd be in a room full of kids who were all quite nervous. And I would talk to them and they're like, well, how are you so friendly? Like, why aren't you like anxious or nervous? And I would say, well, I just realized that everybody else is probably worried about looking like a fool. And they're going to be so grateful that I was the one to look like a fool that they're gonna not be thinking about how much of a fool I look like, but they're gonna be just grateful that they didn't have to do it. They're gonna be like, oh, thank goodness she did it. And I've often been okay with looking like the fool and taking the leap and be like, oh well, I'll just be the fool first. and then, everybody else will feel comfortable.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes
Hmm.
sense.
And then you're also in power of it. If you choose to look like the fool, it's easier because then, if people think you look like a fool, you're like, well, I chose this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's why you should be a silly goose on purpose, for sure.
Totally. Um, but yeah, so I would also love to talk about kind of the cycles of creation. So you're a very creative person. You put on CBC, you perform, you DJ, you make tracks. You're a producer. You're a teacher. You're a mystic. Like it's a lot. It's a lot. Um,
There's a lot.
so what are your tips on kind of managing, that neutral time, that restful time, that time where you need your downloads? Like what are some practices, because it's very important. So can you speak on the importance of kind of the rest and creativity, as well as how you
Yeah.
bring that into your life?
Yeah, it's the most important thing for
Mm-hmm.
creativity is neutral experience. So nothing coming in, nothing going out, because that's where the magic that's where magic is, right? That's where creativity really lives. And that's why people go into artistic burnout, is because they're not capable of honoring what energy is, right? Like completing a circuit, like I keep saying, the magnetism is the study, right? It's the pulling in of information. The art itself, the architecture, or the creation that you actually manifest physically, that's that electrical component. A lot of people are really good at going back and forward between the two of those, but don't honor meditation, don't honor silence, don't honor, time without stimulation, time without scrolling on the phone. Something that I just recently started doing was leaving my phone in a completely other room after a certain hour, and never, never, never in the bedroom. And my time before bed is just like an off gassing of all of my thoughts. And then that takes enough time. Then I can get into some kind of a meditation, right? Where there's actually like a suspension of time and a suspension of like activity going in and out. And that's where I receive my best ideas. And I'm often the most supported when I do it, but in nature, specifically for me, it's by water. But everybody's body will know what environment supports their peace the most, right? So for me, I have a very specific place that's close to me that I go, and it's just no in, no out.
Okay. And since we're on that train as well, I'm curious, like, what are some of the other things that nourish your creative freedom?
Nourish my creative freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, one of the biggest things that nourishes my creative freedom is being organized. Um, and it's not something that I have been the best at, but when I do, and I make myself a schedule, and I really, really am grateful and appreciative of the time that I have to create my art. Like, really, I express gratefully what I have and not focusing so much on what I don't have, if you know what I mean, and what I can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, just really, really reflecting on what I'm grateful for. That usually gives me the energy to be able to actually make those schedules. Like for me, I'll make intentional like artist retreats where it's like I make a full schedule for myself for like several days, usually 3 or 4 days. And it's got time to rest, meditate, do research, take a class, work on tunes, work on some album, apply for grants, whatever, whatever. And that's my organized, analyzed time that is created to have a plan to be able to accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish. And those little pockets of artist retreats have changed my life in terms of like, how much I'm able to accomplish in a small amount of
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. As artists, often, like many people who are artists, they want to quit their jobs so they can make art all day. But then sometimes there is this funny thing that happens where when the art becomes the full-time job, there can be some resistance to doing the work, even though we're like, wait, this is the work that I dreamed of doing when I had my 9 to 5. But sometimes there's this like program that's like, oh, because it's a 9 to 5, there's this resistance to it. So the gratitude is definitely a key point where it's like, wait a minute, this is what I would be squeezing in the shoulder hours if I was working a 9 to 5. And I can do this. It's so beautiful that you've created that life for yourself.
Yeah, and you get to create a schedule that's nourishing for you,
Mhm.
And my schedule does require quite a bit of rest.
Mhm.
And I sleep in and I wake up a little bit later and get started a little bit later because that's what my body needs.
Mhm.
And the way that I process things is going to be a little bit different than the way that you process things or the way somebody else
Mhm.
processes something. So yeah, that's the
Mhm.
beautiful thing about it being autonomous is that you get to create your own schedule, but make sure that you get organized and have your plans. Otherwise, we as artists can get very right-brained and very scattered. So if you are a creative who's trying to make a business of what you're doing, you have to be organized like a business and
Mhm.
prepared. Otherwise, you're not going to
Mhm.
receive like a business. You have to create the
Mhm.
container in order to receive the thing.
Mhm. Yeah, containers. My last podcast, or maybe two podcasts ago, was about specifically about containers and the importance of containers because without the container, say you have a canvas, it's like that's the container for your painting. There's no shame around the container. It's it's
Yeah.
it's not a it's not a bad thing. The boundary can be really helpful to the creativity.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, a lot of artists have that blockage around it. But yeah, just
Yeah.
changing the frame and being like, all art is limitation in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
Expression through that limitation. So finding a way to find the art in the spreadsheet, finding the art in the schedule, finding the art in that more structure, in that structure.
Yeah. Find a way
Mm-hmm.
to make it playful, make a
Mm-hmm.
game out of it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
have your favorite music on in the background, light some
Mm-hmm.
candles, have it be a special time, order some
Mm-hmm.
sushi, anything you can do to associate it with like a good time, or like
Mm-hmm.
you do it with your friend where you guys have a
Mm-hmm.
meetup time and you
Mm-hmm.
do your organization stuff. I think that's brilliant, you
Yeah,
know.
it's just like a date. It's really nice having that.
Yeah, so something that motivates
Mm-hmm.
you. So for you be like social time, for me
Mm-hmm.
probably be like I said, like lighting candles and incense and making a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a ceremony of it. Um,
Mm.
just to slow things down.
It's interesting that you just said ceremony because I've been thinking about ceremony as well throughout this conversation because that's something that you bring to a lot of your experiences.
Hmm.
And you bring it to the dance floor for sure. And, especially since you work with wisdom keepers for your tracks, but the ecstatic dances and the sober raves are often very ceremonious.
Hmm.
And then you also study with a few lineages ceremony. And I would love to first ask you for your definition of ceremony because I think it's a really important definition and it cuts to the chase.
Hmm.
And then I would love to kind of flow into that, into the role ceremony plays into your creative freedom.
Whoa, those are good questions. So ceremony itself, the word, the etymology of ceremony. So Sarah is the first beginning part of the brain, right? So cerebellum and cerebrum both start with Sarah. So it has something to do with the mind. And MON at the end of ceremony, that represents the moon. So now I know it's the subconscious mind. So to introduce something into the subconscious mind, that's why we call it when you have an altar in your ceremony. An altar is where you go to alter your reality by way of, using the wisdom of the subconscious mind. That's what ceremony is. So how I utilize ceremony is like in the modern way of creating bass music, I'm using the ancient wisdom of getting people dancing and moving to repetitive music. And while you're in a heightened state, you're receiving ceremony, you're receiving positive messaging, you're receiving wisdom on how to complete emotions, on how to move through the human experience, on how to move into self reflective love, how to express sacred rage. It's very deep, dark, cinematic music with a big heart, essentially, right? To help open the heart.
Hmm. It's interesting. One of the key factors of ceremony, when we work with sort of the the fern medicine and with the lodge and things like that, is introducing ourselves and asking for consent. And I think that's something really beautiful. I think if people want to listen to your music, yeah, feeling into what it feels like to introduce yourself to the song and ask for kind of the consent to receive the information, because there's some music
Yeah.
where I'll be dancing at a festival and I'm like, no, I don't consent to this message, I don't consent to this story, I don't consent to this program. So I say no to this program because there are some that I don't jive with. I'm like, not my story, not my spell.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's something that I believe we can do because it's like, okay, there's music happening. Sometimes we can't control our environment all of the time. But being able to say like, okay, do I consent to this information? Do I not consent to this information? And so it's really neat.
Yeah, I think it's important too that when you do get into that space of, it's called working in benevolence, right? So meeting something in
Mm-hmm.
equal measure means to recognize something as an influence and then give consent or not consent. What's important though is if you don't consent to something, if you still engage in it, you will cause chaos within your body, right? So
Mm,
that's something that's really important to, say it's like we have to complete the circuit. We have to complete the cycle of what you're doing there. So if you're saying I don't consent, that's a decision.
mm-hmm.
So you must meet the decision with action, right? In order to complete what is trying to be moved, right? Um,
Mm.
so if you don't think something feels good and you engage in it, you're telling your subconscious mind you're engaging in a ceremony either way. You're engaging in a ceremony that says I am taking part in something that I'm not consenting to. That's
Mm.
overpowering your own body, and
Very
that's
splitting.
it's very splitting, and it causes internal chaos
Mm.
and internal electromagnetic resistance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's one of the harder things with boundaries, you know. And it's like so many people are like, "Oh, boundaries," you know, as artists, but it's like, "Oh, it's very important because if we don't have those boundaries, then we will feel very split, for sure."
Yeah. And you have to,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you have to take action on the
Mm-hmm.
things that you're saying. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of people kind of get stuck. They learn
Mm-hmm.
about boundaries and they stay there, and then
Mm-hmm.
they just keep doing things that are actually crossing their boundaries, which causes them
Mm-hmm.
harm. And then, you talked a lot about feeling like, if you do, enforce boundaries and you start, you know, protecting your energy in a new way, you said there's a lot of fear around isolation. Um,
Mm-hmm. Or
part
punishment.
or punishment. I mean, part of the energy cycle of growth does sort of have that kind of built into it, that kind of caterpillar effect of like, you know, birth is often birth is often followed by loss, and loss is followed by birth. It's like the it's the human organic cycle.
It's a
Death,
circle of life.
the circle of life, like a death of, maybe one's lower self is the birth of one's higher self, and therefore it might also mean the death of anything in your environment that was, nourishing that lower self, anything that was feeding your other wolf, if you know what I mean. So,
Mm.
it is inevitable. I've experienced it many times throughout my life during many different shifts or different kind of perception deaths and perception births, that
Mm-hmm.
my environments will change, based on where
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes there is a part of you that needs to be let go. Like, you know, I remember the first time I asked for more, you know, financially what I felt I was worth. There is definitely like that lump in the throat that you're like, and what if they never hire me again?
exactly. What
You
if they say
know,
no? Yeah.
what if they say no and then I have to go back on it and take it for less with my tail between my legs or whatever? So,
No, as an
no, I know.
artist,
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
artist, I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was to take gigs based on your skill, not your desperation. And,
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced this a lot over the past few years where like people putting on events wanted to pay me like $100 for like
Happens.
a 2 hour performance. Meanwhile, that 2 hour performance is also preceded by like maybe 10 hours of like preparation and
And
practice,
driving, 2 hours of driving. And
right? And all of these things.
mm-hmm.
And, it's really important to say no to those things because energetically, you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be tied to saying yes to things that are not valuing you as an artist and not valuing,
Mm-hmm.
what you're creating. And
Mm-hmm.
those no's strengthen the yeses
Mm-hmm.
for the things that really are going to
Mm-hmm.
offer you equal nourishment for your gifts.
Mm-hmm. It's like you could take that time to record a new track. You could take that time to
And
clean up
that
your
track,
website.
exactly, and that track might get synced, that
Mm-hmm.
might give me $10,000 as opposed to the
Mm-hmm.
$100 I was singing. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly it. Is
Mm-hmm.
is where are you directing your yeses? Where are you directing your
Mm-hmm.
what are you consenting to, right?
Mm-hmm.
What reality are
Yeah.
you consenting to?
Yeah, it's a super important thing to consider when we're curating the art that we listen to or receive or experience, when we're curating the art that we're making, when we're curating the experiences and the careers that we're building for ourselves. And it's interesting because often we don't always feel like we're in charge. Um, but I think that's part of that decision of like calling in community of people who do that. Like sometimes we can, feel maybe triggered by people who are asking for what they're worth, and it's like, oh, are you are you just jealous of them? Because if you're triggered by someone who's an artist who's getting well paid, and you're an artist, like it's worth looking at and being like,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, it's really good when you notice, like don't be ashamed
Mm-hmm.
of being jealous of somebody because jealousy is a really
Mm-hmm.
good opportunity for you to know maybe what direction you're looking to go. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
jealous of somebody, you might just see somebody that's succeeding in a way that you might not believe for yourself yet. So
Mm-hmm.
by knowing you're jealous, you just know that that's just a
Mm-hmm.
way that your inner world is, telling you that something is up.
Yeah, it's a piece of information, and it's like, okay, if they can do it, so can I. They have a
Exactly.
blueprint. You can just look at their social media and see what they're doing, you know
And it
take
might,
notes. Don't. Yeah.
yeah,
And go on.
don't mimic them, but also use it as permission to keep going
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
know that you can't really copy anybody's blueprint and be successful.
Mm-hmm.
You must follow what lights
Mm-hmm.
up in front of you, what
Mm-hmm.
lights you up, because that's the code of purpose.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's always good to see if there is that moment of jealousy where you're like, oh, but I do notice that, this person is maybe shows up consistently, or this person,
Yeah, and when you're a very
yeah.
awakened person, it's not that jealousy goes away, it's just that you use jealousy in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
You use jealousy as a gift to show you,
Mm-hmm.
where you're lacking in belief of yourself in some way.
Mm-hmm. It's the everything is for me premise,
Yeah, the
where it's
universe
like,
is conspiring in your favor at all times because encoded into your DNA is the serotonin and the dopamine that's released when you're in alignment, when you're doing the things that light you up. Your DNA is saying, yes, 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 more, 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 you know?
mm-hmm.
And when we overpower, we don't listen to our bodies, we can't hear those signals. Then that's
Mm-hmm.
when we get into being compatible with manipulation because then the outside world starts to tell us who we are. And that's where we get into dangerous synthetic territory. That's where we
Mm-hmm.
get people wanting to merge themselves with AI and being
Mm-hmm.
scared of creating and making art. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
And it's so interesting because the AI conversation is clearly something we can't ignore in the world right now, because it's there. It's like it's there. We can see the word. Like I use the word whimsical a lot anyway, but like we see the word whimsical being used a lot more, and it's like, okay, I see. I can see. You can usually see when there's a little energy of an AI, either piece of art or person or language. But it is very interesting. One thing about AI that is helpful for me to kind of overcome some of the introduction of AI has helped me overcome degrees of my perfectionism, because now saying, okay, people want human art. And so when I make something that's slightly imperfect, people will know for a fact that AI didn't make it. And so it's kind of a beautiful permission to be messy. It's a little flag that says, "Hey, I'm organic. See, the lines aren't perfect."
yeah. And a line will definitely be drawn in that way too, where
Mm-hmm.
people will crave human experience. I've
Mm-hmm.
even started tagging my songs to let people know that I'm not using AI, that they
Mm-hmm.
can expect the voltage of human,
Mm-hmm.
coming through that music, and it will make a difference because
Mm-hmm.
the spirit of you gets quantumly attached to the art that you create, and people can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of fear campaign out there to scare people into
Mm-hmm.
being creative in these times, but in reality, it's also pushing more people to get to join the Whimsy Guild. Like more people than ever who, because of that darkness or because of that threat, are becoming more creative.
Mm-hmm.
So the darkness always serves. There's always a gift in the shadow, and there's always a shadow in the light. And that's why I said, like, even when you become very, very like woke, so to speak, jealousy becomes a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Your depression becomes an opportunity for a deeper style of creation. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it all
Mm-hmm.
comes. and it's all the human experience. You just work with it in a different way.
It can be in your favor.
It's always
I, I mean, absolutely. There are some beautiful pieces of art that I've created through very dark times, for sure. So, absolutely. It's very interesting because I was gonna like close off this podcast with kind of like if you had any closing thoughts or advice for people who are looking to pursue more creative lifestyle, or people who are, you know, already living it, and some tips. I know you've already given so much, but if there's kind of like, if you could kind of, you know, put it in like a diamond light precision, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Any creative project that you're going to start goes and moves with the cycle of light in the universe. Okay. And what I mean by that is that there is a perfect timing for everything, there's a perfect cycle for everything. And a part of every single creative cycle, there is failure, there is cringe, there is challenge. And what sets people apart from those who really bear the fruit of their vision, bear the fruit of their dreams and their fantasies, is persistence. And the art must be nourishing for you, and that's how it makes its way to, you know, that's how you keep going through the hard times. If that what you're creating, no matter what it is, if it's ugly art, if it's music, if it's paint, doesn't matter. You know, it could be spoken word. It's as long as it's nourishing for you, it's going to guide your path. It's going to light up those stones in front of you. Don't try to know the end result. Don't try to use somebody else's life as an example for what your result is supposed to even look like at any of those phases. Be guided by your own self nourishment, and step by step by step, each step will reveal itself in front of you in the right timing, just like a flower.
Mm. Yeah, what card is that in the tarot with the stones that form as they walk?
Four of Wands.
Four of Wands. Thank you so much. Honestly,
Oh, Three of
yeah.
Wands. Sorry. Three of
Three
Wands.
of Wands? Three of Wands? Natalie be in the audience like,
Yeah. Wait. No.
Excuse me.
No, it's three.
Three of Wands. Yeah. Honestly, this is a thick podcast. I'm so excited. I'm super grateful that you are my first guest on this podcast. It means so much to me. And thank you so much. And I'm really excited. If people want to find more of your work, they can go to your social media, to your website, to your Patreon.
Or you can meet me in the astral plane.
Or in the astral plane. So any of those, and I'll put all that information, the tags and stuff, in the description, so y'all can check that out. But thank you so much, and I'm excited to have you back on, because I feel like we only scratched the surface.